In 55 seconds, time slips away unnoticed for most, just a fleeting moment, but for Niki Lauda, those same 55 seconds felt like an eternity. This is what happened during Niki Lauda's death-defying moment. It was during that brief span that the Formula One world champion faced death head-on. Yet, in defiance, he emerged victorious, defiantly spitting at death's door before donning his helmet and walking away. This is the remarkable tale of Niki Lauda's confrontation with mortality. His legacy isn't just defined by his 3 world championships, but also by his unyielding spirit. Lauda's name echoes through Formula One history, not just as a champion, but as a symbol of resilience. Across the decades encompassing his championship wins, he witnessed Formula One evolve, from legends like Graham Hill and Jackie Stewart to newcomers like Nelson Piquet and Alain Prost. Yet, Lauda's impact transcended mere victories. He left an indelible mark on the sport itself. The battles he waged and the principles he championed continue to shape safety standards for drivers even in the present day. However, the harrowing journey he endured to achieve those advancements is nothing short of chilling. Niki Lauda had been the dominant force throughout the 1976 season until the 10th race at the Nürburgring, amassing 61 points, a substantial lead of 45 points over his competitor James Hunt. Hunt, a darling of the media, possessed charm, charisma, and a daring nature willing to risk everything for glory. Lauda, on the other hand, embodied thoroughness, discipline, and precision, lacking Hunt's effortless appeal and often ridiculed for his thin face and prominent teeth, earning him the unflattering nickname, the Rat. Despite not excelling in looks, Lauda's speed was unmatched, owed as much to his meticulous preparation as to his courage behind the wheel. By the 1976 season, he had established himself as the fastest driver on the grid by a considerable margin. Lauda's tenure at Ferrari was marked by his blunt demeanor, although fortunately for both him and Enzo Ferrari, they didn't share a common language. Lauda was unafraid to assert himself, knowing his capabilities and determination to overcome any obstacle and emerge victorious. As the cars lined up on the grid at the Nürburgring in 1976, another championship win for Ferrari and Lauda appeared almost certain. The Nürburgring circuit, winding through the densely forested Eifel Mountains, had gained notoriety for its treacherous nature, having already claimed the lives of 5 drivers. Lauda had expressed understandable concerns about the track's safety standards, even proposing a boycott at a Grand Prix Drivers Association meeting due to the inadequate fire engines and safety crews. However, despite his advocacy, Lauda found himself outvoted by the majority of the drivers, and the race proceeded as scheduled. Time would soon turn Lauda's apprehensions into grim reality. As he lined up in second place on the grid, little did he know the ordeal he was about to face. A brief shower before the start convinced Lauda to begin the race with rain tires. However, realizing his error once the race commenced, he hastily pitted after the first lap to switch to slicks and regain lost ground. Yet with his new tires struggling for grip, disaster struck at Bergwerk on the second lap. The ensuing accident, captured in chilling footage, saw Lauda's car transform into a blazing inferno upon impact, fueled by its full load of fuel. As the car spun across the track engulfed in flames, the situation worsened when Brett Lunger, unable to avoid the collision, crashed head-on into the burning Ferrari, further propelling it towards the track's edge. Each passing second in the inferno became a critical battle for survival, with every moment potentially determining life or death. The subsequent events are recounted differently depending on the source. In Maurice Hamilton's 2020 biography, Niki Lauda, one widely accepted narrative unfolds. According to Hamilton, during the Nürburgring race, only one ill-prepared marshal was present. Faced with the gravity of the situation, drivers knew immediate action was necessary. Harold Ertl located a fire extinguisher and managed to douse the cockpit, while Brett Lunger, a seasoned veteran from the Vietnam War, positioned himself at the car's center. As seconds ticked by, it felt like an eternity, particularly for Lauda. Progress seemed impossible until former Ferrari driver Arturo Merzario, familiar with seatbelt mechanisms, courageously entered the intense heat to release Lauda's harness. Merzario described the difficulty of the moment, noting Lauda's visible agony and eventual loss of consciousness, which allowed for the buckle to be freed. However, the sudden release of weight caused Lunger to lose balance, inadvertently pulling Lauda with him. In later years, Merzario reflected on the incident. Merzario's courageous intervention on that fateful day undoubtedly saved Lauda's life. Lauda never forgot the bravery displayed by the Italian and remained deeply grateful to him throughout his lifetime. Lauda recounted, "There was a guy called Arturo Merzario who jumped into the fire alone and pulled me out of the wreckage. So, I survived. He really saved my life there because a couple of seconds more, I would have never made it." Lauda sustained severe injuries, particularly to his head and hands, along with a broken collarbone. He was swiftly airlifted to the hospital, where his condition rapidly deteriorated. Such was the severity of his injuries that many began to prepare for the worst, even summoning a priest to administer the last rites. However, 3 days after the terrifying crash, Lauda defied the odds and regained consciousness. Upon awakening, he humorously said, "Tell the priest to F off, I'm still alive." For an excruciating 55 seconds, Lauda endured unimaginable suffering. His injuries were severe, resulting in the loss of his eyelids, nearly all of his right ear, and extensive burns to his scalp, so severe that he always wore a hat in public afterward. Recalling the moment he asked a nurse in the burns clinic when he could look in the mirror, he received a response that should never have been permitted. When the nurse switched on a neon light, the combination of heat and water made Lauda's head instinctively tilt into his shoulder. He reflected, "Of course, it got worse and worse. I had seen my injuries at their worst." Despite the harrowing incident, Lauda remained determined not only to make a comeback to racing, but also to defend his world title. Less than a month after the accident, he showcased his readiness to Ferrari's team management and Enzo Ferrari himself by appearing at the Fiorano test track near Bologna. This action served as a powerful statement, especially since Ferrari had already secured a replacement driver within a day of the accident, a decision that deeply offended Lauda given his reigning world champion status. Ferrari team manager Daniele Audetto vividly recalled Lauda's arrival, describing him as a haunting sight. "He was a vision that I can never forget in my life." Niki arrived in Fiorano in his plane that he apparently flew to Bologna himself. He was so pale, the scars, he'd lost his hair, he could not close his eyes, he was like a ghost. With a world championship to defend and having already missed 2 races, missing another was not an option for Lauda. Just 33 days after his brush with death at the Nürburgring with burns still causing him pain and bandages holding him together, the world champion remarkably finished 4th at Monza. As the season's climax unfolded in Tokyo, Lauda maintained a solid 3-point lead over Hunt. However, relentless pain and impaired vision from the fiery damage to his tear ducts forced Lauda into an unwanted decision: retirement from the race. This paved the way for James Hunt to clinch the title. Despite this outcome, the spotlight remained on Lauda, who had defied the odds by returning from a situation deemed impossible to survive. Remarkably, the following year, Lauda reclaimed his status as world champion, and in 1985, securing his 3rd title with just half a point ahead of his McLaren teammate Alain Prost. Gracefully retiring from the track, Lauda left behind a legacy synonymous with the sport. Yet, it was those 55 seconds that shaped everything he did. The memory of the crash lingered, following him into every facet of his life. Lauda passed away on May 20th, 2019, months after receiving a lung transplant, a consequence of the toxic fumes he had endured during the fiery crash 4 decades earlier. If you enjoyed this retelling of Lauda's story, consider exploring my other videos on Formula One's greatest names, some of which offer lighter fare than this heartbreaking tale.